I'm about to wrap it up. Go to chapter 30, Genesis chapter 29, and soon to go to Genesis 30. I'm going to back up just a couple of verses just to bring us up to where we left off. In Genesis chapter 29, if we go back to verse 18, we know that Jacob came all the way. He was sent by Rebekah to come. No, that's not right. Rachel sent him all the way back to her family and to find a wife. And so he has found one, or God found one. God knew which one he was going to take, and that's Rachel. And so in verse 18, he has already met her family. He's already told them that he wants to marry Rachel. And in verse 18, now Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter. The older daughter is Leah. She has a sight problem. And we'll see that here shortly, or maybe we already have studied that. But anyway, he's willing to serve 7 years for Rachel. He's the one that suggested that, not Laban. And Laban, we'll see what he says in a minute. So Jacob has made up his mind but to choose Rachel, but really that's okay. He made up his mind, but God's already made up his mind that it's going to be her. Rachel is the one he came to find. So in verse 9, Laban says, it is better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. So he says, stay with me. Now remember that. It is better that I give her to you than to another man. That's important for you to remember because she's the youngest. Okay? She's the youngest of the girls. So in verse 26, in fact, he's going to... he's telling the truth. Laban is. He's sort of telling the truth. But he isn't completely telling Jacob the truth. He's not telling him all about what they think is a family, their practice. And most likely it is not their tradition. I think that Laban is kind of making this up. I think he's saying, in fact, this is his exact words in verse 26. His exact words, he will claim that practice in our place, that's not, he didn't say this is the tradition of families. And it's all come to pass here in just a minute. You'll understand. So back to verse 20. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him, it says, but a few days because of the love for her. That's hard for me to understand. I waited a year to marry Beverly. That's the longest year I ever had in my life. But apparently not Jacob. Just a few days because of his love for her. Laban never mentioned Leah to him at all. And neither did he claim this is our practice. He didn't come out and tell Jacob right off hey, look, this is what we practice, so you'll know. Nothing like that. So it also wasn't Laban's suggestion that he worked those 7 years. That was Jacob. Rachel to him is priceless. I'll work for you 7 years. So the love between Jacob and Rachel grew during that 7-year period, didn't it? I mean, we can figure that out, that they grew closer and closer. So in verses 21 through 30, we see Laban's going to show his first part of his deceitfulness. Now, he's going to be deceitful all the way through for about 14 years. But then Jacob turns the tables on him later. And we're going to see that. Verse 21 through 24. Chapter 29. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go in to her. And Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him. And Jacob went in to her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came in the morning. I'm going to stop there. I'll save that for in a minute. So, in verse 21, Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. I've already worked for you 7 years." And so Laban is about to pull a dirty trick on Jacob that you couldn't be any more dirtier. The past is going to come back to him. How can I explain this? I'll say it this way. The past is coming back to Jacob because he has been the one who's been pulling dirty tricks on Esau and Isaac, hadn't he? But now it's coming back to him. In fact, Laban is doing this to him and with deception. Now, I often wonder, didn't Leah have some kind of say in all of this? I wonder what he told Leah. That's what I'll never know that, and one day I will. I'm going to ask that question when I get up there. I don't know how it's strange. Unless Leah was in on the deception. That's up to y'all to figure out. I don't know. Regardless, God is going to use both Rachel and Leah. And I guess it was God's, because God's going to use both Rachel and Leah. And you're going to see that Rachel and Leah have 2 handmaids. We're going to talk about that. And all of them have children. I mean, Jacob's got a house full of women, and they all have children. And it results in the 12 children that become, when God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And then those 12 children are born, and it becomes the what? 12 tribes of Israel. Isn't that right? God is amazing. He is just absolutely amazing. We're going to see now a remarkable true story. Jacob must have been counting the days. He's worked honorably for 7 years for Rachel. And we see this remarkable true story. Rachel, as a bride, is denied having the husband that she loves. I mean, I don't know how Rachel feels. I know how Jacob feels. He feels humiliation. He feels mockery, all of those things. But I wonder, and you wonder, did Rachel know? Did he tell Rachel? I don't know. But Leah has been substituted in her place. In verse 22, Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Most weddings then and today have feasts, have meals. And you see the bride and groom and how happy they are eating the meal. I wonder if that took place. I don't know. There's a lot of questions, isn't there? I got a lot of questions. I don't want to confuse you. So the happiness has turned into a disaster, at least for Jacob, and maybe for Leah. Rachel. I've often wondered about Leah and God's plan for her. I wonder if it really would have been an insult. I wonder if tradition says it really would have been an insult for the younger to be married before the older. I don't know the answer to that. Do you? I don't know. Like Sarah says, I don't know. I wonder how much convincing that Laban had on. He had to convince 2 ladies to me. He had to convince both of them. I don't know this, but that's just kind of logical thinking as a human. I wonder how much convincing, or if he would, or maybe he gave them gifts. I don't know. That's just making you think. In verse 23 and 24, now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him. And Jacob went in to her, and Laban also gave his handmaid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. This passage is maybe hard for a man, I don't know about you ladies, to understand and comprehend, but we're thinking, you have to think about their times. God has a plan. He accomplishes it even though the weakness of people. He still gets the job done. Even though we're weak and we make mistakes and we go counter to what God expects of us, He still works through that. We have a nation, and we're going to have an election. We ain't no telling who we're going to get, one or two anyway. And we don't know how that's going to turn out, but we have to have the confidence that God's in control, that God will see it through. Even as a Christian in our life, and we think everything's going rotten for us, that everything is so terrible, and we don't see how anyone can recover from the things that are happening to us, but we know one thing: God is with us. In Romans 8, verse 28, you remember that? Everything we do, God will work out. For all things will be good, according to His will. We wonder how much convincing Laban had to do, but we don't know.
At that time, wouldn't it have been whatever he said?
Yeah, it would have been whatever he said. He wouldn't have had to have much convincing, would he? He wouldn't. You would thank you for that. That helps me a little bit in my mind. Plus, huh?
They did what they were told.
Yeah, they did. No question. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it took much convincing for Leah.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it took too much convincing for Leah.
Probably not. Yeah.
She has something wrong with her
Yeah.
decision, so that makes her not very
Yeah.
charitable.
Yeah, that's right.
She probably knows.
Yeah, that's right. She's probably bumping into things and poor eyesight, like I do, you know.
And she probably thinks no man would ever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
But that's just me.
Yeah, I understand that. I do. That's a good one. Thank you. Mainly, God has a plan, and He's going to use Leah, and He's going to use Rachel. It's just amazing to me. These two women and these two handmaids, each one they have, Jacob and Leah, had 7 years to get to know each other. I mean, you know. But after all these years, we think to ourselves, he must have had many conversations. And we think to ourselves, how could he not know? But God did it, I guess. And then we wonder how Rachel was completely out of the picture, but God had a plan. And through it all, God's will will be accomplished in the making the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes, and Jesus coming into the world. Back then, Leah was heavily veiled, so I don't know, this darkness of the night, all of that. Laban devised a terrible deception and a trick to solve the problem for Leah and him. And also, he's going to get another 7 years of work from Jacob. But he would go ahead and give him Rachel, too. So now he's going to have two wives, two handmaids. And Laban also knew Jacob's honor and character, didn't he? He knew what an honorable man he was, so he's going to use that. And he knew he would not cast out Leah, and he would not go and elope with Rachel. So he knew those things. All would have been against the custom of the day. And so he's going to have both girls. 7 years turns into 14 years. Laban takes full advantage of that 14 years. Verse 25. So it came about in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? So you notice the language in this verse. We can see Jacob, he's in shock. He's upset with Laban. And the King James says, Laban beguiled me. That's what the King James says. In view of Rachel. Rachel's his true love. He will always love Rachel the best. I mean, he just will. Jacob wants to know why he was treated this way. Leah's now his wife, and he didn't even want her. He wanted Rachel. So he says, what have you done to me? Why have you deceived me? And it was Rachel he worked 7 years for. I'd be a little mad too. But Jacob, once he was a master of deceit, he and his mother, and now he's been deceived. Isn't that amazing how it works like that? Verse 26, but Laban said, now watch the words, it is not the practice in our place where we live, to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Now he tells him. Laban is in the process of justifying his action, so he should have been up front with Jacob, but he wasn't. Jacob should have checked that it was Rachel. You know, we can think of all these kinds of things. Some scholars believe that they had no tradition, and Laban says that just the way it's done in our place. That's what it says. I mean, so let's look at verse 27 through 30. Oh, any comments from anyone? Verse 27 through 30. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you also the other for the service which you shall serve me for another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. This was after a week. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel for her maid. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban for another 7 years. So he said in verse 27, I want you to complete this week with Leah, and then I'll give you Rachel also. And so Laban, he says, complete that week of 7 days, and you can have Rachel, but you're going to have to work 7 more years. That's 14 years. He's going to be gone from his home for about 20 years. Something like that, maybe a little more. Verse 28 and 29, Jacob did so. He completed a week, but you notice what he said, Rachel, Jacob's wife, plus the handmaid Bilhah, and so plus Leah and her handmaid Zilpah, and now he has a lot of women in his household, doesn't he? Jacob now has the wife he loved, and that required 7 years of his life and 7 more. Just because God did not oppose this doesn't mean that God supports it, does it? He works through the weaknesses of us. And so Jacob's name is going to be changed to Israel. These 12 sons are going to be the 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus Christ will come through the tribe of Judah. These Leah, by the way, I'm getting a little ahead here, but I want you to understand it before we get into it. Leah has 6 sons. 6 sons. Zilpah has 2 sons. Bilhah has 2 sons. Rachel has 2 sons. And we know they are Joseph and Benjamin. And so those 12 sons, I got them wrote down. I'm going to read them to you. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judas, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali, Joseph, and Benjamin. That's the 12 tribes of Israel. And it's interesting that Joseph was the one sold into slavery in Egypt. His other brothers did it. It was the idea of Judah. He came up with that idea. Judah said, put him in the pit. Then let's sell him to the Midianites coming through, going to Israel. And Judah is the tribe Jesus comes from. The one that tried to save him, he agreed to put him in the pit, but he was going to go back later. Do you remember which one of those sons it was? Huh? Maybe it was Reuben. He was the oldest one, wasn't he? Yeah. So, there you go. That's what we're going to be looking at. These 12. Huh?
Benjamin was the youngest, but wasn't the most.
Yeah, that's right. Benjamin was the youngest.
Shows how Laban trusted Jacob too, by going ahead and giving him Rachel when he hadn't done the 7 years yet.
Yeah, hadn't done the 7 years yet.
Jacob could have taken all.
He could,
all the women.
in the middle of the night, couldn't he? Verse 31, now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So God knows that Jacob loves Rachel more than Leah. He knows that. In verses 32 through 35, Leah has 4 children in a row. Now Leah says, and I have had 4 kids and you have had none. You know. And Reuben, behold a son. Reuben means behold a son. That's what Reuben means. Simeon, her next child, means hearing. Levi, next child, third child, joined. And then the 4th child is Judah. It means praise. I like that. Because from the tribe of Judah, who comes? Jesus Christ. So you might guess Leah believes in giving Jacob 4 children so far, that Jacob would love her more. It's not the case, so not the case. That's what she thinks, that Jacob will love her more as his wife. But these sons will be among the 12 patriots. Judah is the one I like to look at, because all the promises of God are sure and steadfast. And through Leah, and through Judah, Jesus comes into the world. The entire world will never be the same. Never, ever be the same. And guess what? We're going to study Genesis 29 next time. When y'all want me to get off of Genesis, you will need to tell me. You will need to tell me to